that's the hard part. Let's look at Joshua 4, and 1 through 9 we'll start with. It says, "When day," and they are still there to this day. They weren't absolutely intact a few years back, but they found where they were. They found out what these stones had done. Now, you go through the whole Holy Lands, and there's these stones all over different places. And that was set up so you would ask, "Father, what happened here? Tell me exactly what happened here." And the father, his job would be to sit down with the kids and explain the battle that went on, the miracle that happened here, the things that God had done, how he helped the Israelites, how he helped the people to get through battle, how he conquered Joshua to cross the Jordan into the Promised Land. This was a huge thing when they placed these stones and said, "God's now delivering you into the Promised Land." Now, he didn't say into the easy land. I mean, things aren't going to be easy into the Promised Land. He's just going to cross you over it because that was what he promised to do, right? He promised that I'm going to get you out of captivity and I'm going to take you on. The battle and the war never stopped. They were always in battle. It's amazing how majority of our wars are more biblically based. I mean, as far as spiritual reasons. I mean, if you look at Israel, and if you look at Iraq and Iran and all that kind of stuff, that's what the major fight is about, people. It's their religious convictions. It's their spiritual lives. Because if you don't agree with their spiritual lives, what's that new guy that's coming out? He says, "I'm going to kill the United States people," right? Because he's a leader in that part. Now, it's not all Muslims. It's not all the people in those areas. It's one segment of that. But we tend to kind of forget about these kind of things. And we got to go all the way back, I think, to the Civil War. Leon showed me his great-grandfather, the one who was the Civil War one. I mean, he served in the Civil War in order to free us up. I mean, we have to look back. We have to look back at what these people have done. I mean, the only reason why we know what Jesus did is that we have a documentation of it, don't we? To some degree, this is his monument, his memorial to us. We can read this and know exactly who Jesus is. The kids and I, when we were walking around the cemetery this morning, I said, just read it, because it'll tell you a little bit about the person. Okay, your parents, your father, he did something with measuring, didn't he?
He's a machinist.
Okay. Yeah, on the tombstone it has a little thing that, what is that called, a protractor, whatever, where you would know. Caliper, there you go. I mean, he has a little caliber on there. You know his story a little bit. You read the military markers, you knew that person served as a corporal in the United States Navy or Army or Marines. It says a little bit about them. But to me, a lot of them, you can tell who exactly were really, really tight with the Lord. Because it has scripture on it. It has different things like that. Now, it doesn't always say this story, does it? Because I'll tell you, there's some markers out there that are just stones. I mean, there's nothing on them. So that even tells you that these people didn't have enough money to get a headstone, or they didn't make an impact on someone's life to put one on there. So this morning, I want you to think, what kind of headstone are you going to have? What kind of headstone are you going to have? I'm not talking physical, how it's rewritten. I'm talking a spiritual sense here, okay? What kind of headstone are you putting together? Once we're long gone, we hear stories of Ephraim Bowen. He made an impact on a community. He was the fourth person in Randolph County that settled here. He planted a church. He saw it was very needed to have God in the middle of whatever he was doing, so he started holding church in 1814 with his family. And about 30 other people started gathering together to have church. And then they finally decided, well, we got to build a church a little bit bigger, a little bit more centrally located. So they built that. And then 100 years later, or whatever, how many years later, they built another church because that was getting too small. And then you know what? They had a revival. They were in the upwards of 195 people in this church because of this one person saying, we need Jesus Christ in the middle of this community. So if you look at his headstone, you don't necessarily see that in a physical sense, do you? I mean, you read his physical headstone, it says Ephraim Bowen, he died on such and such date. But the legacy and the things that were handed down for the kingdom are still here today. These are very important aspects of who we are and what we're about. We should be all these stones that are placed and said, look what God has done. I mean, you can hardly read this stone. Look at that. That's Ephraim's headstone now. But it still sits there today. But the guy said this was awesome in Sunday school, that this place has been here 200 years. Our church has been here 200 years. It's no different than the military guys. They built a freedom for us here. They're fighting for that freedom. And as frontline warriors for Jesus Christ, are we paving that ground? Or have we become pacifists? Have we said, well, someone else can do it? Man, it's too much hard work. I'm not going to fight it. It's amazing. I had to chuckle a little bit because the girls came up yesterday. They were going around the cemetery taking pictures for me. Oh, it's hot out there. Why do we got to do this today? And I thought back to the military guys. I mean, the heat and the cold. Then I think about Joshua. And I think about Samuel. I think about these guys. You know, anytime these guys can say, you know what, let someone else do it. Let someone else, hear God's voice. Let someone else, follow God's leading. What kind of headstone are you? What's your headstone say? The finality, walking around the cemetery this last week and just reading, it all came down to two things for me in my head. These people are long gone. They've taken their last breath. They're either in heaven or hell. That's the finale of it. Their battle's over. Whatever it was in their life, their battle's over. They fought the fight. Did they fight the good fight? Did they lay their life down for Jesus Christ? He laid it down for us, but did we lay it down for him? Did we lay it down for our little ones? Do we care if this church is here 200 years from now? Think about that. Did Ephraim and his family, Hannah and that whole bunch, did they sit down and say, man, we're going to build this church. I wonder if it's going to be there 200 years from now. I don't know. But we have the benefit of talking that now, don't we? Do we want our church to be here 200 years from now? You know what I've also come to a conclusion over the years in hearing churches and hearing people? It's become more about these four walls than it is about God's kingdom work. Not just our church, but this generation, our generation. We like to idolize what we built. When I heard back then, they had no squabble about shutting that church down and building a new one up on the corner here. Our world has changed considerably. We start valuing the different things in life rather than what these people have actually laid their life down for. Can you see the two